Welcome back to the video series for the 2025 Heroscape Mystery Masquerade, an online event where the twist is that all players are anonymous until after the event is finished. My secret identity for the event is Feral Troll, and this video is the finals, where I'm facing the illustrious Marcus Decimus Gallus for the title. This is probably the least overlap my pods have had with my opponents so far this event, with no direct synergy and not a ton of indirect ones either. Marcus has a pod of Nottingham Brigands with Corm the Dark, a pod of Repulsors with Zedekron, and a pod that's just Death Reavers. Death Reavers have soft synergy with basically everything, but within my pods, they'll be strongest with the Arrogrettes, as that's the only ranged piece. They also obviously have synergy with both of Marcus's other pods, as they have good range as well. And they also counter the Brigands pod fairly well, but less so the Repulsors, as the Repulsors have anti-robot powers. The Brigands and the Repulsors are kind of separate ranged pods without much direct relation to each other. Corman does have a neat synergy with the Rats, where he can use Facade to switch himself with a rat and force the attack, triggering Scatter. This map is Desolate Courtyard, and the glyphs are Maniglodin and Wannock. I don't really like taking Brigands first overall if the Rats aren't banned, as they become a very powerful counterpick. Same thing with the Death Chasers pod and the Arrogrettes pod. So I'm wondering if you have to take the Rats pod first overall if they aren't banned. So let's first take a look at that. There's no ban, and you pick Rats first overall, and see what happens. I think the most natural counterpick is going to be the Bladegrets, as that whole pod has Disengage, and it can pair nicely with either the Death Chasers or the Arrogrettes, depending on if the opponent bans one of them or not, but they can't ban both. If you take the Blades, it really leaves the first picker in a bad spot, as they'll only get one pod to counter Blades and some part of whatever other pod the Blades take next. They could ban the Repulsors, as that is good into Death Reavers, or Death Chasers or Arrogrettes because they have synergy with Narak. I don't think this map is especially good for Arrogrettes or Ice Troll, aside from Maniglodin, so I wouldn't ban that. Death Chasers seem poor into Rats and Brigands, and get stopped by the Repulsor screen, so I probably wouldn't ban that. So I probably would ban the Zedekron Repulsors pod, as you can't really take that one yourself, as it only gives you Zedekron for offense across your entire army. As the Blades player, I'd pass on the Arrogrettes, as Rats just hard counter that too much. I actually think I'd take the Brigands here. Less so because they pair well, and more so because it leaves the first player with a lack of good options for their last pick, with only 2x Death Chasers or 2x Arrogrettes with the Ice Troll as their entire offense for the army. Now let's consider what happens if you take Bladegrets first overall instead, if nothing is banned, because taking the Rats first didn't end very well for the first picker. If you take the Narak pod first, you're kind of preempting Death Reavers with the last pick, as you know they won't be great for your opponent. I actually think taking Repulsors as a counter has some merit, as it pre-counters the Rats a bit, and their attacks from height can actually kill Blades, albeit not great ones. But it lets you have more freedom with your second pick, which I think I'd use on Brigands if they don't ban it, and Death Chasers if they do ban Brigands. So the Blades player should probably ban Brigands and force the Death Chasers pick, and then take Rats themselves, where Rats are quite good into Death Chasers and can hold Wannock well for the whole game. I think this route ends up being better for the first overall picker. What if you ban Blades instead? Then I think that taking Rats first overall becomes really good, as there's not much left to counter that, and they'll work well with anything as the final piece. If your opponent takes Repulsors, you'll get either Brigands or Death Chasers to counter them with, as long as you don't ban one of them, both of which seem quite strong, and then Arrogrettes end up as the unplayed pod there. None of these mocks really have me wanting to pair Arrogrettes with Death Chasers, though, in large part because of how bad that pairing is into 12 Rats, which is an interesting consequence of how our pods interact. Now, what happens if you ban Rats? Now taking the Blades first overall has some less appeal, and the strength of Death Chasers plus Arrogrettes goes way up. I think now I'd end up taking Death Chasers, and planning to pair them with either the Blades or the Arrogrettes. The counterpick to that is probably to take Blades, and then being forced to take Arrogrettes if they don't ban them, because it's too good with Death Chasers otherwise. The first player wouldn't ban anything there because they'll either force Aerogruts or get to take them themselves afterwards. If Aerogruts are gone, then they might actually take their Repulsors, as their Repulsor's opening is quite strong into Aerogruts specifically, and solid into Blades as well, and Zeta is useful into Ice Troll and Narak. Probably the weirdest mock of the bunch here, but I think this one ends up being better for the second picker. Alternatively, you could still just take the Blades first overall, even if Rats are banned. They're still quite good there, as they're just good into everything, and then you can ban whichever of Death Chasers or Aerogruts your opponent doesn't take to block that combo. Looking at that iteration now, I actually think this seems better to me, as either the Death Chasers or the Aerogruts on their own on this specific map is going to be pretty bad. So I think that in all situations, I would rather have the first pick, and just take Bladegrets if they aren't banned, and take Rats if the Bladegrets were banned. If I'm forced to pick second, I'd ban the Rats to reduce the strength of the Blades a bit overall, and avoid letting the first picker get them on the final pick of the draft. So, that's the plan. Now, who is the valiant opponent codenamed Marcus? Well, whenever I see this many Rats, my first thought is always going to go to Doc, who is rather well known for playing them. I also looked up the .org usage data for Nottingham Brigands, and of the 10 people listed on that page, I think the most likely overlap here, especially with Rats being here and having won their round robin, is going to be Earthling. I'm actually inclined to guess Earthling here because of the Brigands, but those are the two names that pop out to me based on the pods that Marcus has chosen to bring. Anyways, let's hop on into the game and see how it goes. After polite salutations between the most famous general of Rome and the upstart uncommon hero, me, I lose the dice off, and Marcus chooses to pick first. I follow my plan and ban Death Reavers, and Marcus then surprises me by taking Repulsors first overall. I can see the merit here, though it wasn't what I would have done. 9 Repulsors is a lot, and on height, they can kill 2 defense units, of which there are a bunch in this pool. I thought there were 2 reasonable combos for me to respond with, Blades and Death Chasers, or Blades and Brigands, but in both cases I wanted Blades, so I took them next. Marcus then banned Death Chasers, so I took Brigands, leaving Marcus with Aerogruts. I was a little surprised Marcus banned anything, as I thought getting stuck with Aerogruts with the last pick was a bit rough here, though Ice Troll can definitely do some work. I elect to place second to see how Marcus sets up their start zone, and see Ice Troll next to Road and Repulsors in the front line. I think Marcus is likely to lead Repulsors, as they're best as a ranged ping piece, but I might have an opportunity to snipe Ice Troll with Corman mid-game because Ice Troll is next to Road. I place Brigands in the front of my start zone, avoiding any Blades or Narak being next to Road, though I think I made a mistake by not having Corman in the front row of my start zone. If he was 1 space further forward, he could have hit Ice Troll in 2 moves instead of 3. I was worried about him getting sniped though, as 4 life with 2 defense is pretty weak. I lose the opening initiative, which is definitely good for me, and I do see the 3 order markers on Repulsors that I was expecting. Repulsors develop just far enough to be 1 outside my range from any heighted spots. I could send Brigands to the outside and take 2 even ground shots on Repulsors, but then Repulsors would get height on those Brigands for 3x 2v2s. I don't really want to try to trade evenly here, as Repulsors are cheaper than Brigands. I end up bonding with Corman to get him to Road, and then bring a Brigand up behind the wall. Repulsors don't have any good shots, and end up developing 3 more up. This will make it tougher to avoid getting heighted shots from them, and to avoid letting them engage for the +1 attacks. At this point, my goal is to play for an initiative switch here, where I can get Brigands to max height, so I bring 2 of them up the middle, but to where they are out of range of being engaged by a Repulsor yet. I get 1 kill from the 2 shots. Repulsors then get 3 shots from height off, killing 1 Brigand, but it was the one who could have made max height on the next move. My 3 is Brigands, and I send the south one up to height, but it misses the 4v3. I develop another one north, to where it could take 2 different 4 height spots on the next order marker. I end up going with full Brigand order markers for the next round, which is a bit risky if I lose initiative, but is definitely what I want if I win initiative. I think that if I lose the Brigand versus Repulsor exchange, I'll just be in rough shape anyways in the match, so I decided to play into the other outcome. I do win initiative and get the key switch, and see 3 order markers on Repulsors with 1 on Aerogruts. I think if the 3 wasn't on Repulsors, it would have been on Zeta instead to hit Corman, so I don't entirely buy the fake 3 on Aerogruts here. I get both Brigands up to max height, and they get both kills. Repulsors move up again, engaging the South Brigand and focusing fire on him, but it takes all 3 attacks to get him. With that Brigand dead, I bond with Corman instead, as he can now engage a Repulsor, and the 5v3 goes through. I'm pretty happy with either Corman drawing fire away from the Brigands here, or just being ignored. Either way, this is a good spot to get utility out of that piece. Repulsors move up again and engage the top Brigand. They get him on the first attack, but Corman takes no wounds on the ensuing 2 attacks from height. Defense. I sent Corman to engage 2 Repulsors on height here, not wanting to let a full squad get heighted attacks on my remaining Brigands, but I missed the 5v3 this time. A Brigand then moves up out of the start zone and gets an even ground kill. The 3 is indeed on Repulsors, and one of them takes an LEA from Corman to get free, which misses. Damn. Big roll there, as it would have brought them down below a squad. They end up killing that forward Brigand and putting 1 wound on Corman. Going into round 3 now, I have 2 Brigands left, and they're pretty vulnerable. If I win initiative, I definitely want the 1 on Brigands, and if I lose initiative, I want to have at least 2 order markers on Blades. I think the optimal order marker distribution here is going to be 2 on each card, where the question is, where is my order marker 2? I also think I'm a bit up on the game state here, and elect to hedge a bit more as a result, going with the 1 and X on Brigands and the 2 and 3 on Blades. This also gives me the best upside if I lose initiative, for the potential switch going into round 4, as I'll have more Blades developed this way. I do lose initiative, and I see 1 order marker on Repulsors, 2 on Zeta, and 1 on Aerogruts. Again, I think the Aerogruts order marker is the X almost always, as 2 Zeta turns are needed for him to reach Narak. The 1 is Repulsors, which was the only real option, and they get 2 heighted shots into Brigands and 1 into Corman, but miss both Brigands and put 1 wound on Corman. My 1 is Brigands, and I take an LEA with Corman, which misses, to get to the central height. This gives me a better attack for this turn, which makes it less likely that Zeta gets the +1 attack next order marker, and better positions to threaten Zeta on my order marker 2 if I had it on Brigands, even though I don't. I get the 5v3 kill on that Repulsor, and a Brigand comes up out of the start zone and misses a Repulsor. This Brigand is a bit vulnerable, but I'm thrilled if Zeta hits it instead of Corman or Narak, so it doesn't really matter. The 2 is on Zeta, who moves up and puts the petrifying 2 for 2 into Corman, but Corman continues the theme of this event for me, and rolls 3 out of 3 shields to live with 1 life. Defense. My 2 is on Blades though, so I can't capitalize on Corman living to kill Zeta here. I think I make my biggest mistake of the game here, moving Narak up 2 spaces. I had failed to find a way to avoid Narak taking the Zeta shot, so I thought I'd just develop him a tad. But there are 2 better options. I missed that I can avoid the Zeta shot entirely by putting Narak here and blocking Zeta's shots with a blade here. Alternatively, I could bring Narak all the way up to level 2, because Zeta can't reach level 3 height in 1 move, which denies Zeta height on Narak, which is clearly better than what I did if I don't want to retreat him. I'm giving Marcus a single 3-attack Zeta shot here to get back into it, which I could have avoided. I then develop Blades up as much as they can, intending to catch Zetacron after he moves up to hit Narak. The 3 is indeed on Zeta, who does move up and hit Narak from height, doing 2 wounds, but Narak does survive. My 3 is Blades, and I bring Narak up just far enough to cover where I'll put a forward blade on height to hit Zeta. I move that 1 blade forward, hoping to do a wound to make LEAs harder for Zetacron, and bring up 3 more from the start zone. I do manage to get that 1 wound on Zeta. Going into round 4, I have an interesting decision on whether to sneak the order marker 1 on Brigands, or just have them all on Blades. Regardless, I think a 1-3 order marker distribution is correct. The 1 on Brigands is better if I win initiative, as I can get the 5v2 from Corman into Ice Troll. But that attack is somewhat unlikely to actually kill him. And if I lose initiative, I'd prefer to have them all on Blades, as Corman just has 1 life left. I end up hedging for the initiative loss, thinking that I was a bit ahead in this matchup right now, and that I could kill Ice Troll across the next initiative switch if it came to that, if I lose this next initiative. I do lose initiative, and see 3 order markers on Aerogruts, and the likely X on Zeta. Ice Troll moves up and kills a Blade, and 3 Aerogruts move forward but don't get any ping kills. My 1 is Blades, and I make a mistake with my Narak placement here. I thought this Blade was on level 2, and so could reach here, so I placed Narak to leave room for him, but Narak should have just been here to block height instead. Narak manages the beautiful 4 out of 4 skulls to put 3 wounds on Ice Troll, though. After realizing that the Blade can't make it, I can only engage Troll with 1 more Blade, and it's from low ground, but I have to try for it, as killing him just wins the game. I also get 1 Blade on height on an Aerogrut, 1 on height on Zetacron, and I bring up the last Blade from the start zone. I kill the Aerogrut, miss Zeta, and then get the 2v3 to kill the Ice Troll. Marcus then concedes with 5 Aerogruts, a 1 life Zeta, and 1 Repulsor, and I win this one to take down the 2025 Mystery Masquerade title. I liked my side of this matchup after the draft, and I think I still like it, as I mainly think Aerogruts are just fairly weak on this map, and that Blades are fairly strong into this pool. The initiative switch from round 1 to round 2 was big, though, in terms of letting Brigands take height, and Zeta not one-shotting either hero was also quite massive for me. Interestingly, neither of us ever took a glyph in this one. It seemed like each time we had to prioritize development over Wannick wounds. In terms of Marcus's identity, my official guess after the game was Doc, based on the rat pod, some in-game things, and the time of day that we played the game at. I'm quite curious to see if any of my opponent guesses were actually correct. Time for the player reveals. I'll start with listing my official guesses after each game. I thought Ornak was IHA, Atlaga was Sir Heroscape, Venick was Shurig, and Marcus was Doc. Then the actual list of players was revealed, and Shurig wasn't on it, though the other 3 were. So I needed a new guess for Venick. The other players were Kevin Dola, Knight of Light, OG Blaha, and Skywhale. I made several guesses based on army composition. I guessed that Iwashio was Kevin because of all of the 1x common squads, and that Shori was OG Blaha based on the Dro. I ended up guessing Knight of Light was Maladrix, though I didn't have as strong of a reason why, and then that left Skywhale as my Shurig replacement for Venick. And now for the reveals. 6 out of 8 right, including 2 out of 4 of my initial blind guesses. Not bad at all. I inverted IHA and Skywhale, but guessed the others right. I will happily take a 75% on this particular quiz. This was a super fun event. Thanks to Dysol, Big A Bullfrog, Rye Guy, and anyone else who helped to put it on.